We're going to take one of these and turn it into something like this. Sublimation on Skinny Tumblers. I'm using the Heat Press Nation 7-in-1 tumbler heat press. I'm going to walk you through every step coming up. I'm Roger, welcome to the loft above the shop, and I have not done any sublimation videos here lately. We've been so busy with some other projects with lasers and stuff in the shop. I haven't had time to really shoot any videos on doing any sublimation. So what I'm going to be doing today is sublimation of Skinny Tumblers. I'm using the 7-in-1 heat press, as I mentioned, from Heat Press Nation. I have the Skinny Tumbler element in there, and here is how you put it in if you have one of these and are not sure. So something I thought it'd probably be good to throw in here is how to put the element in for the Skinny Tumblers on the press. Get this set in place here. Of course, you want your cord over towards the controller. You're going to find the 4 holes that line up over there. Put the little thumb screws in. And I'll need to do the same on this side. Okay, and don't forget to connect that, because if you forget, it isn't going to work. So we're ready to go. I just need to get a tumbler and set the tension. Yeah, we're going to need a little more than that. Yep, everything appears good. So you see, that wasn't too tough. So now you're going to need some graphics. So I'm going to take you on the computer here. I'm going to show you how I'm going to print these graphics out. The graphics I'm using came from designbundles.net, and I will put a link down in the description of the particular set of graphics I'm using here. These are kind of a beachy look. And the reason for that is these are actually going to be for our own use, the ones I'm making here today, because we're leaving for a trip to Playa del Carmen, Mexico here shortly. And the last time we were down there, well, the gift shops are like just outrageous with what they want for tumblers like this. And it's, of course, you can't have glass down by the pool. So this is a good solution to that. I'll just print my own. We'll throw a couple of them in the suitcase. We'll take them along. I'm going to make some extras too, and maybe one with a Halloween theme. We'll do all those, but let me show you how I get these graphics set up and printed. Okay, I'm going to be using a program called Inkscape. I already got it open here. So to get my graphic in, I need to import it. And I am going to choose this one right here. This is actually very simple. I'll just drag this over here onto my page. And I do need to change my document properties. I just noticed to set up for A4. Now I'm using US letter. So we have our image, but it doesn't fit on the page. It needs to go the other way. So I'll go up here and just turn it that direction. Scooch it over here. I'm using the arrow key on the keyboard. So there we are. I'll just send that to my printer. Using an Epson 2720 on this one. Go to Preferences. Of course, it's letter. Using Premium Presentation Paper Matte. And yes, I know I could have presets here, but I like to work with each one. Make sure there's no mistakes. Print preview. Of course, quality high, color. Now I'll go up here to more options. Turn off high speed. I do want to mirror the image. Click OK. And print. Send that one to the printer. There's the print preview. As you can see, it's been mirrored. We'll print it. Okay, I'm going to do one more here yet. So we'll do a file new. Just run this by you again here in case you missed something. Document properties, US letter. Down here to import. And let's see what do I want this time. Bring this one in. Drag that down here. Turn it 90 degrees. Use the arrow key on the keyboard to get that kind of in the middle there. I like that. Here the same thing, print. I'm using my 2720 for this one. Preferences. Again, I do have a set when I'm doing a lot of these. But I like to go through these when I'm doing separate projects. Here are more options. Of high speed, mirror the image. Okay. I'll hit print, and that will bring up the print preview once the one that's printing right now gets done. Okay, once your graphics are printing, you have to do a little bit of trimming. So on one side, you want to take maybe 1/2 millimeter of actual graphic off as you cut. That's very important that you not leave any white space on that side. And you want to make sure it is absolutely straight. We really should have a better straight edge than this. But so as you can see there, I took just maybe 1/2 millimeter of the graphic off. Now on the other side, you don't have to be quite so particular, but you do need to trim a little bit of that white space off. But still leave yourself a little bit of white space so you have something to work with your heat tape. And it doesn't need to be perfectly straight, but it helps if it is. It'll help you when you're lining up your graphic on your mug or on your tumbler. If you have one of these and you want to trim it with this, try to avoid that temptation. It is possible as this runs that it will tear some of your graphic if your blade is not absolutely 100% pristine, and this one isn't because it's had a lot of use. I need to change the blade in that. That's why I'm using this rotary cutter here. So there's our image, and we want to make sure the mug is clean and nothing's inside it. So let me go get this cleaned up. Okay, once you're satisfied that everything is clean, make sure your graphic is right side up with the right side up of the cup. Just kind of set it on there. Bring the sides up and around. And it's very important that it not only be square, but it be straight. So you want to make sure everything is absolutely straight. And you want it tight. And I do mean just as tight as you could possibly get it. I like to rotate my hands around it a few times. And if it gets a little bit out of square, you need to straighten it back up. You definitely want to keep it square. It is that the edges meet and your white little thing overlaps. There will be a visible seam, I'm sure. Most of these have a detectable seam if you look close enough. Once you get it good and tight there, I put a piece of heat tape across. Then work my way up here, make sure that's staying tight. I'll add another one. Back to the other side, making sure it's good and tight. Now I will put a strip of heat tape down the seam, and I won't do it all in one strip because I don't have enough hands here. So I'll just do it in sections. Now, depending on your tumbler design, the top here I have no taper. It's just, this will grip just fine. At the bottom here on this particular brand, there's a little bit of taper around the bottom down here. So there's a couple things you can do. You can either leave it as it is and just let it kind of fold over, or you can fold each little section over and then tape it. It takes a whole lot of tape. I'm not going to do that on this one because there's very, very little taper down there. So this one's ready for the press. Okay, just kind of walk you through that again a little bit. Here's the other one that we made. Set my tumbler in the middle there. Of course, make sure you're right side up. I did a mug upside down once, and I can say once. I've never made that mistake again. Make sure that your clean cut edge is on the bottom. Fold everything over, make sure you're square. Again, I like to run my hand around here a couple times to get everything just as tight as I could possibly get it. Make sure your overlaps are good on both ends. So I have a little bit on that end and just a little bit on that end. And I could probably take more of that to the bottom. Try to put your heat tape on straight and don't do that. There we go. And that one's ready for the press. Okay, time and temperature. You're wondering is 365 degrees for 70 seconds. We'll then take it, rotate it 180 degrees, and press it again for another 70 seconds. I'll just set this in there. Pull it shut. Let it count down. Okay, you will definitely need to have your heat-resistant gloves on, because if you don't, and you turn this without them, you won't do it again. We'll open this, rotate this 180 degrees. So now the heat tape is down. Close it, run it for another 70 seconds. Okay, we'll open this up. I'll take this one out. I've got a heat-resistant mat sitting right over there. I'll set that on. Put my next one in. And just repeat the process. No, you don't want to peel that hot. Let that cool off. Okay, these have cooled off enough to handle, so we're ready to do the reveal. I have a trash can over here. I'm not throwing that on the floor. So there's one of our beachy scenes, and as I said, it depends on the graphic you purchase. These are not seamless. As you see, you got a nice view of the ocean surf there all the way around. In fact, it even looks textured. It's pretty neat. But there is a seam that you see. But that's fine. Grab one of the Halloween themed ones here. This particular one was done with A-sub paper. I used a couple different printers, so I got different papers and different printers here. Kind of like unwrapping presents at Christmas. There we have it. The witch is in. So you got a witch on there, but there again, you still have a seam where the two different types of graphics meet, but that's expected on a lot. There is ways to do completely seamless tumblers, and I'll probably do some here in the future, but it's a little bit of a trick. You got to have perfectly meshed graphics to be able to do that. So there's number two. Ooh, that one's still pretty warm. We'll come back to that. This one here is another one of the Halloween ones with the witch, because I needed to make two of these for someone. I thought since I was making mugs or tumblers, I'd do them all at once. There's our other witches in. And there's our sunset tumbler. And there again, you still have a little bit of a seam on it, but it's actually it's not as obvious as some of the other ones there, but I really like this one. So you may be wondering, okay, you've got that same graphic laying right over here. Why is that? Because when I trimmed that, it didn't trim out the way I wanted it to, and it left it would have left a really white seam on here. The paper kind of tore. That's why I said not to use that Cricut trimmer. I'll turn that into a mouse pad. Won't go to waste. Okay, got one more here. There's our palm trees and so on at the beach. A little bit of a beachy sunset thing. There again, it's got a very, very obvious seam on it. So depending on what brand tumbler you bought, there's another step to do. And speaking of the tumblers, don't go to like Wally World or someplace and buy just a Skinny Tumbler, think you're going to sublimate to it. They actually have to be sublimation blanks or it won't work. It has to have a particular polymer type coating on it. So on the bottom of these is a little rubber guy that goes on there. It tells you it's hand wash only, stainless steel for coffee, tea, and water, or maybe your favorite adult beverage. Before you put this on there, it's got a 3M adhesive on it. You need to make sure this is clean. Do that, just rubbing alcohol. A little bit of that on a paper towel. Rub that on there. In fact, I'll do them all at once here. And it's just a peel and stick kind of thing. Well, that's where weeding tools come in handy when you can't get a hold of the backing. And you would just center that in there. Press it down and you're done. This particular brand of tumbler, of course, they come with a lid. Every one of them gets a lid, of course. It also came with a set of stainless steel straws and a little cleaning brush. There again, it depends on what brand you buy. I bought these on Amazon, and I've got another brand, a whole case of them over there I haven't even opened up yet, which is a different brand, and it may not have these straws with it. I don't recall. There was some special flash deal or something going on, and I thought it should be a good deal here. So that's how you do sublimation onto Skinny tumblers using the Heat Press Nation 7-in-1 mug heat press. No, I am not sponsored by Heat Press Nation. They don't give stuff away. I bought that. But it was a better way to do this than screwing around and doing it in that little convection oven back there or in the big oven and doing the heat shrink and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to do all that. So this makes it a whole lot easier. Plus I can do shot glasses and latte mugs and of course regular mugs. And I'll be having a video coming up here on how to do some custom shot glasses to shooters. So it's the next day. That is the day after I shot this original video. And early this morning it dawned on me that early morning dawn kind of goes together. At any rate, earlier this morning it dawned on me that I left a few things out of this video. If you're just getting into this, you may be a little bit confused or you're not real sure. So I want to point a couple of other things out. One of the things you will need to do with your blank is you will need to measure it. So you need to measure the length and you will need to know the circumference. 2 times pi times the radius. No, you don't want to do the math. Okay, well the other thing you can do is take a flexible tape measure like this, crafting tape measure or sewing tape measure, and just wrap it all the way around. And mine are 9 3/8. And you want to check that up and down and make sure you don't have a tapered tumbler. If you have a tapered tumbler, then the graphics layout is going to be different than what I have shown here. So try to get a straight one if you're just starting out. It's a lot easier. And if you get a tapered one, you're going to have to apply the graphic a little bit differently. Okay, the other thing I wanted to bring up was the bottom, where it sublimates around the bottom right here, depending on your graphic. And this one I wrapped just my normal way, but because I'm using a mug press and there's that sponge around it, there's a little bit of a taper up here at the top too, where the lid goes on. Because that sponge squeezes this in and it sublimates around the corners. If you do the system where you put one of these little heat shrink bags over it and then heat shrink it, and then do it in the oven, you'll need to fold at the bottom. That is, after you get your sublimation paper on here, you'll need to fold and tape at both ends. And I mean really tape. You get it all bound down. I'll show you on one. I'll do one here. I'm going to do a few more today, and I'll demonstrate how that is. Now the next thing is a seam. So there's seamless, and those are those with seams. And this particular one here has a seam. You can see where the two sides came together. Same with this one here. These are just landscape views, so there's no matching pattern to come back to. So you just have a seam. On some types, for instance, this Halloween one here, where the colors come around and there's spider webs and bats and stuff, there's still a seam, but it's not quite as obvious because it kind of blends into the seam. Then there are the seamless. Here's a seamless. This is one I made for my great-granddaughter. So as you can see, you know, I've got her name on the front here, but as you turn it around, there's absolutely no visible seam. Where is the seam? The seam falls on this vertical line right here, where the two parts come together. So if you're looking to buy graphics to do tumblers and you want to be seamless, have a seamless seam, which seems right. And those people that are just learning English probably just had a conniption fit. Conniption, there's another word for you if you're just learning it. So, if you want a seamless pattern, shop for a seamless pattern when you're looking for designs. If you're making your own, if you're talented enough in Photoshop or Inkscape or one of those programs, you'll be able to make your pattern match. But they're on the width of your graphic. We'll grab one here. This is one of the ones I'm going to be doing today, and this is not seamless because as this comes around, I don't believe the pattern is going to match perfectly. I'm going to get it as close as I can, but there will be a visible seam, I'm sure. Now if you have a graphic like, I'll grab another one I'm doing here today. You have one like this, where you have a white space, and the white space meets the white space, you won't see a seam. Now, also I should have mentioned, as you're trimming your graphics to wrap, as I've shown, you need to trim one side and actually just go a little bit into the actual graphic. And start with that, and then you bring your other side around, and I overlap the white space. But I do not overlap any of the graphic or the color. I want it to just meet this edge. If it overlaps, you'll get a ghost. You'll have a ghosted dark seam right down where the graphic overlap, because as this sublimates through, it will sublimate through the next layer of paper and down, and you'll have a dark streak. I don't have any examples here because I know better than to do that. But I also wanted to point that out. I'm going to show you what I mean by wrapping the end over where it goes around the bottom taper here. So let me get my graphic kind of set up here. Sure that's right side up. Don't make that mistake. Okay, here, hopefully you can see this. You can see where the graphic is starting to overlap the paper underneath. I need to trim this side. I could also do this side and make a tight seam, but that's a little bit trickier. That needs to be trimmed so that this does not overlap this. So I'll trim that. Okay, so now I have it where the graphic just meets the other side. And I have this set where I want it at the top. So I'll get this folded over here. Run this around my hand a few times to get it good and tight. Make sure your ends are square again. I'll put a piece of tape here to hold that tight. Again, you want this absolutely as tight as you can get it. Now up here at the top, the taper is so small there, I'm not going to worry about taping that. But down here is where I was showing on my particular mug press here, or tumbler press. This will actually squeeze this down and it'll sublimate over this. First I need to tape my seam down here to the side. Now on this end, you need to fold it over, and you're going to have to tape the dickens out of it, because it's going to want to crease and bubble in little corners. So you're just going to have to keep working it around a little at a time. And keep that as tight as possible. Don't leave any gaps like that or it'll leave a white mark. Put that down and push it down good and tight. Then just keep working your way around the bottom of the tumbler. So when you're done, the bottom will look something like this. That's the only way you can get that edge around there real good. So if you were going to use one of the heat shrink bags, you would then slip this into the heat shrink bag, heat shrink it with a hot hair dryer or a heat gun, and then you would bake this in your convection oven or regular oven. Since I have a press, I'm going to be using the press, of course. Now another type of graphic you can use to really hide a seam is a graphic like this here, where you have this just wild pattern out here. And no, it won't match perfect over here, but it would be hard to detect. This would be the same type of thing. Make sure I do this right side up. Perfect. Another little hint is when you're taping, tape on the part that overlaps, or if you're not using an overlap at all, on the side where you can pull the most tension to it to get it as tight as possible. So I'll finish getting this one taped up. Okay, I've run these through the press as I did on the previous ones. This is, again, this is the next day doing some other ones. I wanted to show a little bit about these seams and explain a little bit about wrapping over the end. As you can see on the top here, it did just fine. Bottom here, we got a good wrap around. So this one here says Mama on it, and the pattern almost matches in the back. It's right on there. If you look very close, you'll still see a seam, but this is almost seamless. So this one came out actually better than I expected. The camouflage even kind of matches up on there. So that one came out real well. Well, this one here has that sort of a white space on the back, but where the graphic ends, It's otherwise you can't see a seam at all. Unless you're looking at this little spot right down here, you do not see a seam on this at all. Oh, this guy here with the football and the grass around it, I had to look really, really hard to find the seam on here. This matched up so well. So this is pretty much what I would call seamless. Even a seamless one, you will still be able to find that line if you look real close. Most people won't notice that. And this one here, again, wrapped around the end well, taper fit around the top. It's perfect. Well, this one here, life's better at the beach, right there. So this had the palm trees on it, and I knew they were not going to match. So there's a visible seam here on the back where the two different types of palm trees match, but this was not a seamless graphic either. I knew that from the start, and my wife wanted something like this for when we're headed down to on vacation here this winter. Have her nice cold drink down on the beach. And here I did not wrap the bottom of this around, I just let the mug press do it. And as you can see, it pulled the color, which is a dark color, it pulled it around there pretty well. Most people don't really look at the bottom. When it's sitting down, you can't tell that at all. I mean, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. So there's 4 more examples, and again, I wanted to explain about the seams on these and what's there between seamless, and you need to measure your cups. I do my graphics at 9.5 inches high. These measure 9 3/8, and then I trim and adjust as necessary. Again, do not overlap any graphic on your lap, because that will leave a dark line and a ghost, or a ghost. And speaking of ghosting, one other thing I should probably mention is when you first take this off the press, or maybe you're taking it out of the oven, let it cool off. Don't peel it right away. You may end up with a ghost. If it's still hot and the ink is still hot and you start pulling that paper off and the paper shifts, it's going to ghost. And the same thing holds true when I do our mugs. You know, I never ever hot peel them. Always let them cool off until I can grab them without gloves, and by that time they've cooled off enough that won't happen. One more thing, should you happen to get a white residue on your tumbler, mug, glass, jar, whatever you're sublimating to, after you pull that paper off, a little bit of cold water and maybe a Dollar Tree scrubby or a lot of times just the sponge of your hand will take that white residue off. Some papers will leave a residue behind, some don't. Once in a while you may get one that will actually stick. And I've had that happen a couple times with no real explanation because I'd been using that same paper on the same pieces all along. And just soak it in water, let it sit a while, it'll come off and it won't leave any residue. So that's all there is to doing tumblers, skinny tumblers. Of course, I'm using the Signature Series heat press, mug press, tumbler press, whatever you want to call it, the 7-in-1 from Heat Press Nation. Again, not sponsored by anybody on this. I just kind of wanted to show how we do it here and maybe give you an idea into it. I know I went into a lot of detail. If you're already experienced in setting up graphics and doing sublimation, this may have been a little boring. But if you got anything out of this, appreciate getting a thumbs up. Always helps the channel. And again, always looking for subscribers. Otherwise, I'm Roger in the loft above the shop. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.